Behind the Line Extra for your Friday, October the 4th, 2019. I am your host, KC. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Hit the like and subscribe button on whichever platform you're listening on. It really goes a long way in helping support the podcast. I really appreciate all the support so far. I've only been doing this for about 5 or 6 weeks now, and the podcast is growing every week. We're up 150% over last week's numbers. I'm just really excited about where this show's going to go. I've got some stuff in the works. I'm going to be having some guests on later this month to discuss the upcoming NBA season. Really excited about where we're going to go with this show moving forward. I've got some ideas that will come to fruition as we continue to progress. I'm working right now to begin uploading the show in video format on YouTube. I'll still keep the audio only on Podbean and Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, all of that stuff, but I really want to get it to a video format on the YouTube audience. So stay tuned. Got a lot of good things to come. I'm going to release my NFL plays in just a second. Going into this week, we are on fire. 9-1 the last 2 weeks. I expect another big weekend this weekend, but I'll be perfectly honest with you. The lines this week in the NFL are tough. I mean, they are spot on. It was a lot harder picking the games this week than it was the past couple of weekends. But we'll get to that in just a second. I've been talking the last couple of weeks about the decline of the Los Angeles Rams offense. I say all the time that stats can be very misleading. If you didn't watch the Rams play and you just looked at their statistics alone, mainly on the offensive side of the ball, you would think that this were one of the better offenses in the NFL. And that just hasn't been the case through 4 weeks this season. They struggled against the Browns. They were completely shut down in that first half against Tampa Bay. Really, the offense only got going once Tampa had built a 20-21 point lead and kind of called the dogs off defensively. They're one of the worst first quarter offenses in the NFL. From a team the last 2 years that jumped out to early leads on just about everybody they played. We've talked all about this on this podcast. This is nothing new to you guys. But the big story to me right now in Los Angeles is the decline of Todd Gurley. He has not looked the same since his injury late last season. He wasn't the same in the playoffs. They didn't have him in the Super Bowl. I mean, it destroyed that offense against New England in the Super Bowl not to have Todd Gurley. His role in this offense has been diminished, and he's been a non-factor this year. Through the first 4 games in 2017, Todd Gurley had 106 touches. 2018, he had 94. So far this season, he's had 60, about 15 a game. So I look at this, and I figure one of 2 things are going on here. Either Todd Gurley is still struggling with the injury from last season, which the Rams are indicating that he's somewhat healthy. They have given no indication that he is still being hampered by this injury. So it's either that or Los Angeles is purposely phasing him out of this offense and preparing to move on from him. If it's the latter, then Sean McVay clearly believes that Gurley is past his prime at 25 years old. Clearly, he's not the player he used to be, or he hasn't been so far this season. It's painfully obvious. He seems to have lost a step. Who knows if he'll ever be able to overcome the problem that he's got with his knee. Whatever the reason, it's obvious to me that Todd Gurley is not happy right now with his role in this Rams offense. He had his pregame press conference Wednesday before the game with Seattle, which is airing right now. I'm watching it. Gurley is usually a smiling, happy-go-lucky guy. This dude couldn't have looked more uninterested at this press conference if he tried. He looked like he'd rather be shoveling shit in a horse barn back in Athens, Georgia, than standing there talking to the media about this Rams team. It's kind of tough to hear the reporter's questions on the audio, but someone asked him something regarding the game against Tampa last Sunday. Score of the game was mentioned, and Gurley said that he couldn't remember the final score, but that the Rams had put up 40 points and it wasn't enough. If that doesn't tell you how detached he is from this team, I don't know what will. How can you be on the team of the Los Angeles Rams and not know what the fucking score is in a game that you played 3 days ago? I could go, I'm a fan of the Saints, a super fan. I could tell you the score of every one of their games since the start of the season. There is clearly trouble in paradise in LA. Gurley was also very salty with the media, giving vague answers, short answers, refusing to answer one particular question from a reporter. The lack of a running game has turned Jared Goff into a turnover machine. Defenses no longer have to worry about the backfield. They can bring pressure and force Goff to make bad decisions. They ran the ball 11 times against Tampa Bay. Tampa forced Goff into 3 interceptions that led to 21 points, which was really the difference in that game. Jared Goff had the most unimpressive 500-yard passing game that I have ever seen. Some say that Sean McVay is holding off Gurley until later in the season, into the playoffs, to ensure that he's healthy late in the season. Like I said a minute ago, they struggled without him in the Super Bowl last year. So I can see why people would believe that, but I don't buy it. They aren't making it through the remainder of the season without a good running game. Drew Brees, top 2 quarterback in this league right now. Went 7-9 3 years in a row without a strong running game. Goff is nowhere near the level of quarterback that Drew Brees is. Los Angeles doesn't have good enough backup running backs to be limiting Gurley intentionally. They just don't have the depth at the running back position to do that. If you expect me to believe that Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown are going to be able to carry Gurley's load, you've lost your fucking mind. Get the fuck out of here. That's not happening. All right, let's move on. The NBA season's coming up, and we've been hearing the hype all summer in Los Angeles since Anthony Davis was traded to the Lakers. People are expecting LeBron and company to walk right through the Western Conference on their way to the NBA Finals. I'm not so sure that's going to be the case. Think about LeBron's career for a second. 95% of his career, he was in the Eastern Conference. A conference that, as we all know, was weak as fuck. Who was LeBron's biggest competition to make it out of the East? Dwight Howard for a couple of years in Orlando? An aging Boston Celtics Big Three with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen? When he was at Miami, Paul George and the Indiana Pacers? The Atlanta fucking Hawks? I mean, come on. It was a cakewalk for LeBron every year in that conference. You spend most of your regular season playing teams in the East. I think the Lakers will be a playoff team. Actually, I will go ahead and say I know that the Lakers will be a playoff team. But they're going to have it a lot tougher than a lot of people expect. During the regular season, multiple times, they'll be facing teams like the young and upcoming Denver Nuggets, defensively stout Utah Jazz, Portland, Golden State, though with Klay Thompson being out, with Kevin Durant gone, them losing what I feel like the heart and soul of that team in Andre Iguodala, I feel like the Warriors are on the decline, but I'll talk about that on a future episode. What else do you have out west? An improving Dallas Mavericks squad with Luka Doncic. The Pelicans in New Orleans have a lot of hype going into this year. They've got a lot of good players surrounding Zion Williamson. My point is, look, I've made it this far on this list, and I've forgotten about Russell Westbrook and James Harden in the Houston Rockets. That's how fucking stacked the Western Conference is. Oh, by the way, don't forget, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George playing in the same arena as LeBron for the Clippers. The West is fucking loaded. I feel like this will be one of the tougher seasons for LeBron James. And this is why. I know he's coming in well rested. For the first time in, 14 or 15 years. He's gotten a full summer break because the Lakers didn't make the playoffs last season. Not to mention, he missed, 17, 18 games last year during the regular season. So this is as much rest as LeBron James has gotten in his career. But he's still coming on 35 years old with a lot of minutes, a lot of miles on those legs. But LeBron's in prime physical condition, so I don't think that's going to be his biggest problem. I don't know how well the pairing of LeBron and Anthony Davis is going to be. As a fan of the Pelicans, I've followed Davis closely his entire career. AD is a quiet guy. He's used to being liked. He's used to being loved. He's not accustomed to the media circus that comes along from playing with LeBron. He's used to the New Orleans media fawning all over him. This team is going to get the best effort from every other team in the NBA. That's how it is when you're on a team with LeBron James. Everybody gives you their best shot. It's the same as when Michael Jordan was in the league. What do you think would happen if the Lakers began to struggle? Well, all you got to do is look at the past. We've seen it before. LeBron James is not afraid to throw his teammates under the bus. We saw it in Cleveland. We saw it last year in Los Angeles. He blamed everyone but himself for the Lakers' struggles last year. He was awful defensively last year. That's the worst LeBron James has been defensively in his entire career. It was a complete lack of effort. I remember one game where Kyle Kuzma was literally pushing LeBron to go out and defend a three-point shot. He got embarrassed in a game against the Knicks when his potential game-winning shot was blocked by Mario Hezonja. When is the last time we've seen that happen to LeBron James? Anthony Davis isn't the type of guy that you can negatively criticize in the media and it will motivate him to step up. He's not that guy. He also isn't a leader. If LeBron James is on the bench or if he's out due to injury, AD isn't a guy that you can lean on to lead this team. During their playoff run in New Orleans during the 17-18 season, Rajon Rondo was the leader of that team. He and DeMarcus Cousins were pushing AD all year to become the leader that they expected him to be. It never happened. Added to all that, you have a potential ticking time bomb in the locker room with Dwight Howard. I don't understand that pickup at all. I don't care if his deal's non-guaranteed. We've seen time and time again through the career of Dwight Howard what he can do to an NBA locker room. This guy is a fucking cancer. LeBron James demands excellence. He demands his guys to have a strong will to win. Howard does not possess those qualities. First time LeBron gets on his ass, Howard will turn into the petulant child that he is, and the public remarks will ensue. This guy has been disliked everywhere he's been since his time in Orlando, and the exit from Orlando was not pretty. All right, it's going to be a great NBA season. I can't wait for it to start. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I'm going to have some guests on to preview the NBA season in maybe a week or two. So I'll give you guys a heads up on that. Let's go ahead and get to the NFL plays for this weekend. We're on fire right now. 9-2 the last 2 weeks. Let's keep it going. Let's get to the first game. Vikings at Giants. Current line, Minnesota -5. Minnesota's got a great defense and one of the best young running backs in the NFL in Dalvin Cook. Defense and a run game usually travel in this league, but that has not been the case with the Vikings, who are 0-2 on the road this year. It all boils down to one thing, and I've railroaded him all week on this podcast. He hasn't played well at home, and he's been atrocious on the road, and you know who the fuck I'm talking about. If you think I'm eating 5 points on the road with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, you've lost your fucking mind. Minnesota, like I said, isn't the same team on the road. Defenses have figured out that Cousins is limited and have loaded the box to focus on shutting down Cook and making Cousins try to beat them through the air. And he can't do it. This Giants team is rolling since Daniel Jones has taken over. Huge comeback win on the road against Tampa. And they absolutely obliterated NFC East rival and the reeling Washington Redskins last week at home. New York, with one of the worst defenses in the league, held Washington to 3 points. And I know the Redskins are fucking hot garbage offensively, but they're still an NFL team. So holding them to 3 points, I'm not going to say it's impressive, but it's okay. Saquon Barkley's still out, but Daniel Jones will have Golden Tate back from injury. I don't think Jones is going to be as prolific as we've seen the past 2 weeks. But with Sterling Shepard and Tate at his disposal, I feel like he will be able to do enough to keep this game close. You all know how much I love my home dogs in the NFL. But this to me is more about the incompetence of Kirk Cousins than anything else. He has proven time and time again that he is a failure. There's a reason why he's a .500 quarterback through his career and 4-27 against teams with winning records. I like the Giants to keep it close here, taking New York at home +5 over the Vikings. Bucks at Saints, current line, New Orleans -3. Might surprise you with this game here. Huge NFC South division matchup. Winner of this game will be in firm control of the division. The Saints offensively have struggled since Drew Brees' injury. Teddy Bridgewater is akin to a Kirk Cousins. He's not as bad, don't get me wrong. But he doesn't like to throw the ball downfield. He's afraid to take risks. And he's just managing the game right now with dink and dunk passes and relying on Alvin Kamara and this defense to win the game. On the flip side of that, Jameis Winston has looked like a completely different quarterback the last 3 weeks. He lit up the Rams defense last week. He's been taking better care of the ball. He's been getting help from the running game. And the Tampa defense is one of the more underrated units in this league. They don't have a Pro Bowler on this defense, but they're great at stopping the run and should be able to do that with ease Sunday since the Saints can't threaten them in the passing game. I think this will be a low-scoring game. The Saints defense will be the first tough defense that Jameis Winston has faced all year. This is a division game. These two teams know each other very well. Dennis Allen faces Jameis Winston twice a year. He knows how to stop him. I like the Saints to win here, but due to the struggles offensively, I think Tampa keeps this really close. If this line were 2.5, I would take New Orleans. But at 3 points, I'm going to take Tampa Bay. Taking Tampa Bay against my New Orleans Saints +3. Next game, Jags at Panthers. Current line, Carolina -3. Call me crazy, but I think we might have seen the last of Cam Newton in a Panthers uniform. I know it's early. It's only been 2 games. But ever since backup Kyle Allen has taken over, this team has looked completely different offensively. We all know Carolina has a good defense and a great running game with Christian McCaffrey. The problem the last couple of years has been Cam Newton. He's highly inaccurate, and as he's gotten older and more banged up, he hasn't been as much of a threat with his legs. Kyle Allen has fixed that problem so far, completing 72% of his passes, throwing 4 touchdowns, and more importantly, 0 interceptions. Everyone always talks about how great this Jacksonville defense is. I haven't fucking seen it this year. This team gave up 24 points to Joe Flacco and the Broncos. This once feared pass rush, if you take away the game they had against Tennessee, where they had 9 sacks, this team has only sacked the quarterback 4 times the other 3 games. They're 30th in the NFL in turnovers, and they're ranked middle of the road in most other defensive categories. This is not the 2017 Jacksonville defense. Carolina struggles at home, but I think they turn it around here. This defense has been phenomenal the past 2 weeks. Held Deshaun Watson last week to 160 yards. I think Carolina's the better team here. Better quarterback, better coach, better defense, and they're at home, taking Carolina -3. Ravens at Steelers, current line Baltimore -3. This line opened at 4, and early sharp action has been all over the Steelers in this game. This rivalry always ends up in a close game. Backup Mason Rudolph in Pittsburgh has looked okay since Big Ben went down for the season. He played okay on the road in San Francisco, turned the ball over a little bit, and last week he completely demolished the Bengals on Monday Night Football. This game to me is less about Mason Rudolph and the Steelers and more about the Ravens. I was high on Lamar Jackson coming into the season, but he hasn't played all that well since their Week 1 win against the struggling and hopeless Miami Dolphins. He was outplayed last week by Baker Mayfield. He was dominated by a mediocre Kansas City defense. But I think Jackson has a field day with this reeling Pittsburgh defense. Pittsburgh was able to keep it close with Seattle and San Francisco because of the turnovers. Lamar Jackson is very good at taking care of the football. Only 2 interceptions on the season. The Steelers also struggle to stop the run, giving up over 150 yards on the ground twice already. Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram ought to have a field day with this shitty run defense. Big thing to me here is the Baltimore defense. This defense was humiliated last week at home against the Browns. I feel like they come into this game ready and will shut down Mason Rudolph. I'm not buying into Rudolph just yet, just because he had a big game against the shitty Cincinnati Bengals. I don't like taking road favorites. I rarely do this, especially when the line movement favors the home dog. But I'm going against my instincts here, and I'm going to go with Baltimore. This is my least favorite pick of the week, but I cannot trust this Steelers team to cover. I'm going to go with Baltimore -3. Packers at Cowboys, current line, Dallas -3.5. Going from my least favorite game of the week to my favorite play of the week. Don't overreact to Green Bay's loss last week to the Eagles. I thought for the first time all season, the Packers' offense really started to gel. It was expected with a new head coach coming in that it'd take a little while for Aaron Rodgers and the coaching staff to kind of get acclimated with each other. But the offense did enough to win last week. The defense was the problem. Green Bay's defense has carried this team all season. But I have a real concern going into this game with Dallas about the Packers' run defense. Philly gashed them. The Vikings rushed for nearly 200 yards against them. And the Broncos even had success against this Green Bay run defense. The key to stopping the Dallas Cowboys is stopping the run game, and Green Bay does not have the personnel to do so. However, Dallas has 2 offensive linemen out this week. Amari Cooper isn't 100%. Even though Green Bay struggles against the run, they're really good against the pass. Only give up 188 yards per game through the air. And they get after the quarterback. They've already got 12 sacks on the year. With 2 linemen out for Dallas, it's going to be a long game for Dak Prescott. Aaron Rodgers has dominated Dallas. 3-0 in his last 3 games in Dallas. 7-1 straight up, 6-2 against the spread their last 8 games. Also, Rodgers always responds after a loss, going 7-2 against the spread the last 9 games after losing the week before. I talked about it on the show. Dallas has had possibly the easiest schedule to open the season. We saw what happened last week when they face a team with a great defense. The Packers have already played 2 playoff teams from last year. The weakest team they've played all year are the Broncos. If you've listened to this podcast, then you know I'm not sold on Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. I know they're hard to beat at home, but I'm getting the better quarterback, and I'm getting more than a field goal. I'm going to take it. Taking Green Bay plus 3.5, my favorite pick of the week. All right, just to recap. This week we got the Giants plus 5. We got Tampa plus 3. Carolina minus 3. Baltimore minus 3. Green Bay plus 3.5. Taking a couple of favorites this weekend in the NFL, which is kind of unusual for me. Really unusual for me to take a road favorite. But I like Baltimore's defense to bounce back in a big way in Pittsburgh. I don't like betting against my Saints, but I really like Tampa to cover this weekend in New Orleans. Saints just don't have enough offensive firepower right now with Breeze out. Only way the Saints cover that game is that the defense can force Winston into some interceptions. And even with Breeze in the last year or two, the Saints have been awful covering the number when they're a favorite. All right, guys, I'm out of here. About to head to New Orleans for the weekend. Hit the like and subscribe button on whichever platform you're listening on. Leave me a comment with your NFL plays for the weekend. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. I'll be back Tuesday with the good and the bad and the ugly. Have a great weekend.